I had a really awkward question asked of me this past week. And I thought, oh man, I don't even know if I want to talk about this. And I went, you know what? No, this is an important marriage question. We will go there. And I spent a lot of time really pondering this question, and I'm waiting for it. I think that a lot of women are going to have their hackles up, raised over this question, because it's a really, I think, tough topic. Husband actually wrote an email to me. Tony wrote me an email, and he's basically asking how to approach his wife on the topic of modesty with the wisdom of the church. And he's posing concern about extremely revealing clothing that is a norm in terms of her wardrobe. And I went, oof, that's a tough one. I don't know if he's approached her before. I'm just telling you what I've got from the email. So, Tony, if you're listening, I hope that I get to hear a follow-up on how this goes. And maybe you have a piece of advice. Numbers 1-888-914-9149. I'm always hesitant when it comes to the topic of modesty. Because let's be real, honestly, I think for many of us women, it's one of those topics that can be the most enraging. Here's the deal, and maybe you're mad right now. You're like, how dare this husband want to talk to his own wife about modesty and tell her how to dress? But on the other end, I know another woman in my own life, whose husband insisted that his wife wear super skimpy clothing. However, and she's a mom of multiple kids. However, he was insistent that their daughter, wore incredibly modest clothing. And so he had an ethic in terms of what he believed was appropriate for girls to wear and to not exploit your child, but he was willing to exploit his wife. So we've got both ends of the spectrum. On one side, a husband who's saying, I would like my wife to be more modest. What she's wearing is too revealing. I'm not okay with it. On the other side, husband who knows, how men think, knows what is the best way to clothe and give respect to the body, but wants his wife, I'll just say it, to look super hot for him. Where's the balance? What do you do? Okay, if you are listening, ladies, I will say it for you. As a woman, I really do not want anyone to tell me how to dress, nor do I actually welcome someone telling me how to dress. And this might sound crazy, even our husbands. And you think about it. Now, Grant, I think that this is not a topic that I've ever had an issue with my husband. By the way, my husband's great. He will literally buy me clothes, and he buys like beautiful, gorgeous pieces of clothing. I'm very, very blessed. So here's the reality. Tony, here are my thoughts. I think there's a lot that can be said here. We have to understand, first and foremost, that we women are under a tremendous amount of pressure when it comes to how we look. Unrealistic beauty standards. High cut, low cut, crop top. Affordability. Clothing can be extremely difficult. Then you add different body shapes and certain clothes made for particular body shapes. You add longer legs. Something that could look modest on one person could look totally immodest on another person. And then us women can, in the midst of trying to find our own fashion statement, the fashion we like, but what we're confident and comfortable in, there are many struggles, from our pride, toward being sensitive, toward judging ourselves and being critical of others and their appearances. As I mentioned already, the cultural pressure. And I think that there's often, for a lot of us women at different points in our lives, there's this casting off of our own conscience when it comes to our clothing, or even the opinions and guidelines of others. To the point where I think a lot of women have tuned it out, or just enraged to even hear anything because of the pressure, the discomfort, and all of these things that are firing at them. Imagine what it's like to deal with clothing today. And then to also feel the pressure, and I know some men feel this as well, to update their wardrobe, but there's also this constant pressure that I really need new clothes all the time to look relevant, to look fresh, to feel confident. Sometimes there's nothing like a new pair of shoes, a new dress, even if a dress is form-fitting or whatever it is, to make us feel good about ourselves. You see, beauty is so inherently written into who we are as women. And so I think we have to understand the complexity, the sensitivity, and at the end of the day, the desire that all of us women have to be loved and to know that we are beautiful based on the response of our loved ones. So all of this being said, Tony, how do you talk to your wife about dressing more modestly? My prayers are with you. I think it needs to be a very delicate conversation. Now, the God-given leadership role of a husband and father within the home is, men, you have a God-given role to be the leaders, protectors, and providers of your home. And I want to encourage you in confidence in this. But I also want to encourage you not to be prudish, to be prudent, to be generous, and to also understand that there might be a larger complex situation going on for your bride in terms of the types of clothes she's wearing. So I think the first thing to do is to really make sure that we're checking ourselves and making sure that we're not being judgmental in any conversation surrounding modesty. Second, I have kind of an approach you can take to address this, and I give this approach for one particular reason. Many times we as women dress in a particular way because we're either trying to meet a standard, trying to get attention, trying to feel good about ourselves, or any number of complex things that are literally like usually eating our brains alive. And then also add different states in life, and sometimes, things just don't stay in the right place depending on how active you are in terms of what you're doing. And sometimes you need new clothes to adjust to the state of life you're in, but then you're trying not to break the budget by buying more clothing. So start with this. Depending on what your spouse needs and why this person may or may not be dressing modestly, start by complimenting your spouse for a whole month. Start on complimenting your spouse in a way that helps her to understand that she is, one, loved, and B, beautiful. And see after a month how things change. Compliment her when she has no makeup on. And of course, these need to be genuine compliments. Compliment her when she is in her pajamas. Compliment her when she rolls out of bed in the morning. If she's anything like me, because I've got curly, wavy-ish hair. I've got like a rat's nest, puffy eyes, really wild-looking clothing that doesn't match whatsoever. Compliment to show your love and the affection you have for her beauty as well. And see if anything changes after a month. Because for many of us, we need to know that we're loved, we need to know that we're beautiful, and we need to have the attention that is necessary. I'm not calling us women needy, and if anyone calls us needy, gentlemen, you have a whole lot of things that you need from us wives, and we could flip the tables here. This is just part of what's deep down in our being and necessity. And by the way, anyone listening, gentlemen, you want to know your wives a little bit better? There's an incredible book. It's titled For Men Only, What You Need to Know About the Inner Lives of Women. Okay, Lucas, can you post a link to that book? I know you're already looking it up. Can you post a link to that book on social media? It's a small little book, short chapters, mind-blowing. There's one for women about men. So, ladies, if you want to know about the inner lives of men, you've got to read the book. Again, oh my gosh, I just forgot her name. You're going to post it for me in a second. But she and her husband co-wrote one of them, and then it's a very, very helpful to understand. I read this not long after I got married, and I remember coming to my husband with this book, like, do you really think this way? Like, explain to me better this visual dimension of how you think. Feldhahn is her last name. Shanti Feldhahn. Incredible content, well-researched, and very well delivered. It will help your marriage, or help your dating relationships, or just help you in your dating game. Everyone should read this to understand the opposite sex. Okay, so number one, check yourself. Number two, compliment, to give affirmation, love, and to show that your spouse is beautiful. Number three, offer to buy your spouse new clothes. And maybe you can make the agreement that you as a husband have the veto. So she can say, hey, these are the things I like. And maybe you can say, hey, can we agree that I'd like to buy you new clothes? Hey, maybe you can even put no cap or really big cap on the budget, or maybe help save to make this a thing. But say, hey, I'd like to have veto in terms of what you wear. Now, that might be something to consider, or maybe there are other ways that this can be worked out. But if modesty is a big issue, maybe there's a middle ground that could be found. Okay, number 4. And again, I've been saying this all along, but understand your wife's need to be loved and to believe she's beautiful based on the compliments that you give her. We need to know as women that we're admired. And this is where really, I think as a husband, your focus should be in addressing any self-esteem issues, modesty issues for whether it's your wife or even your female daughters. This is all really important, especially with the pressure that we're under. And then from there, maybe it continues to not work out. And maybe you need to work on communication and working through sharing. It would mean a lot to me if you consider not wearing X. Maybe they're just a couple of pieces of clothing. But you have to be prepared for that why. And you have to be able to explain and articulate that why well. Maybe it has to do with the pornographic culture. I have a friend whose boyfriend told her when they were out on a date, can you put your sweater on? I really don't like other guys looking down my girlfriend's back of her shirt. Wearing a beautiful piece of clothing, but he just was like, you know what? I really don't like that your back looks so nice in that shirt that other people are literally looking down the back of your shirt because you look so good. And he wasn't saying that like you looked bad. He was just like, I really don't want other people looking at my girlfriend like a piece of meat. And maybe he himself was trying not to objectify her, I'd hope, and not look at her like a piece of meat. And so those are kind of things to help us understand, because we women, those books I just recommended from Shanti Feldhahn are so helpful, because what I learned in the book for women about the inner lives of men is truly how visual men are. Now, Grant, that shouldn't be forcing us into a certain type of clothing. I don't think we should be looked at as women as being the cause of a man's lust. I think that's problematic. We should more so be dressing for honoring our own bodies, and of course, not trying to lead someone else into a near occasion of sin. But I think modesty, first and foremost, has to do with the honor, love, and respect we show our own bodies. So, in a great question, if you want to get those books, Shanti Feldhahn, her last name is Feldhahn. Again, I'm posting a link to these books on social media. You can find me on Twitter at Timmerie. That's Timmerie. Just to review and to emphasize this, it's so important that we're coming back to understanding how important it is for your wives, gentlemen, your daughters, the women in your life to know they are loved, beautiful, and admired in this. It's so important for us as women